Available everywhere podcasts.
Hello everyone and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. And for our fourth segment of today's show, we're going to transition over to the world of college basketball, play a little bit of a fun game of buy or sell. That is going to be answering a couple of hot topics about college basketball, addressing them for that matter, and really starting to examine certain aspects, whether it be of certain conferences, certain teams, certain players, that could very well determine the outlook of the NCAA tournament. So without further ado, let's talk about three questions that very well, in my humble opinion, answer a lot of debates and ultimately start to get the wheels turning about who and what will matter come March Madness. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Starting off with a lot of questions surrounding this particular conference, more specifically about how they'll look seeding-wise. Will the SEC be a conference that gets all the number one seeds this season? So much talent and depth, top to bottom, in the SEC. Auburn might just very well be the number one overall seed. Even teams like Kentucky, a team like Tennessee could be in the running. A lot of talent. Alabama, let's not forget about them, even with those two losses. This is a very loaded conference. But to answer this question, I'm going to have to say I sell that idea, because there have been a lot of quietly talented teams that could make a case outside of the SEC that could be the one seeds. For example, what about this Duke team? Very impressive win at the Garden this weekend that looked like a practice session against a very talented Illinois team with its own crop of exciting freshmen. And what I really love about this Duke team, if they do get a solid one seed, and it's not just about Cooper Flagg. It's about the defense. It's about the continued improvement of the perimeter shooting. And most importantly, it's about all the different traits of all the different players, including the two freshmen that were brought in alongside Cooper Flagg and Colin Kneppel and Kaman Malwak, that give Duke this high upside. And then let's talk about a team in Houston, man, that has quietly been the silent killers of college basketball this season. Kelvin Sampson is one of the best coaches in college basketball, bar none, for the past 5 years. Truly incredible what he's done in this program. Suffocating defense. A lot of people, though, questioning whether or not Milos Ujan, the Oklahoma transfer, would be capable enough of filling Jamal Shedd's shoes, a former All-American, perhaps one of the best point guards in Houston history. And he has done it aptly enough to the point where Houston could truly be a contender to finally break through and reach the Final Four after several years of disappointment, whether it be in getting eliminated at the Sweet 16 or Elite 8 stages. This could definitely be a one seed capable of knocking teams off. And then in the Big Ten, Michigan State and Michigan, maybe the winner of that final regular season game between the two at Michigan State, we'll talk about a lot throughout the week, could determine potentially who could be in the running for a one seed from the Big Ten. So you never truly know. So at this point, even though the SEC is going to get a lot of teams in, and maybe 1, 2, or even 3 one seeds, I don't think they're going to sweep the one seeds this time around, even though there are a lot of elite teams thus far. Speaking of the aforementioned Michigan, though, here's a question that I'm going to be buying into. Can they win the Big Ten regular season title? Right now, I believe they are a game behind Michigan State. Michigan State does have the head-to-head tiebreaker thus far, but looking at their schedules, they're comparatively difficult. Specifically for Michigan State over the next coming days, they have to play Maryland and Wisconsin, whereas Michigan has a little bit of a respite. They play teams like Rutgers and Nebraska over the next couple of weeks, then conclude with Maryland and then going on the road against Michigan State. But the reason I'm buying into them potentially winning the Big Ten regular season title and being a contender to win the Big Ten Conference tournament is because of Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden, two very special 7-footers that are at the disposal of this Michigan team. They really dominate both offensively and defensively, one of the most intriguing pick-and-roll tandems in college basketball just because of their sheer height. They play Danny Wolf at so many different positions. You play him kind of as a point center, where he could be at the top of the key distributing the ball to Vlad Golden, or he himself could be in the paint creating his own shots. There are certain elements of his game that need to be improved, but as long as these two players kind of are telepathically linked, then I feel Michigan could be a very, very intriguing option. Not just as a Big Ten title contender, but as a Final Four contender as well. And I think that they very well could. If they win those last 2 games this season against a very solid Maryland team, and then getting revenge on the road, most importantly, against Michigan State, that could very well vault them into 1-seed contention. I don't know if teams like Auburn, Bama, Duke, or Houston will fall off in the next couple of weeks, but if they do, then Michigan could be primed to pounce with the way they can play. And that's why I'm buying into the idea that this Michigan team is talented enough to, at the very least this season, win a Big Ten regular season title, if not achieve even more with those 2 big men that they have. And then another final question here about the freshman class, specifically one specific player. I feel this one, for me, will all depend on how this team projects headed into the tournament. Because right now, I don't have a lot of confidence in this specific team. But I do have a lot of confidence in this player, but not because of the depth of this freshman class and who could potentially make names for themselves in the tournament. I feel like I would have to sell this question, or sell the idea of this question for now. But if Texas get into the tournament and Trey Johnson continues to be the catalyst for them, and continues to grow and mature, and this Texas team can become a dark horse, then maybe I can buy into him being the second best freshman in the country. That's the question right here. Is he right now the second best freshman in the country? And in terms of play, you could very well say so, because he's not the reason as to why Texas is faltering a little bit in the Big 12. But I can't go so far as to say with the way certain players are performing in this freshman class, especially for teams where they are the kind of catalyst and X factors for their respective teams, that Trey Johnson is ultimately the second best. Because obviously Cooper Flagg is up there. But then let's think about what Con Kneppel and Kaman Malwak have meant to that Duke team. Yes, they're not the best in terms of players, or specifically in style of play, but they're just as important and fantastic two-way players in their own right. They're just overshadowed by Cooper Flagg. Then look at another similar situation, not necessarily to the extent of Trey Johnson at Texas, but Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey at a Rutgers team, and a lot of people were expected to be NCAA tournament contenders. They're busting their butts off. But this Rutgers team, because of the lack of talent around them, I don't necessarily think that a lot of people would consider them just because that Rutgers team is atrocious. And so that's why it's difficult to assess these freshmen when some of them are in impossible situations, in my opinion. You look at VJ Edgecombe and Robert Wright. They're in a situation where Baylor right now is looking like they can be locks for the NCAA tournament, but not really in a convincing enough manner. Then a guy like Igor Demeen, who's playing for a very underrated BYU team, could be one of the best passers in the country. But how can you envision a path where BYU themselves are true dark horse contenders. So while there's a lot of depth in this freshman class, I have to ask the question, how do you view certain situations? Because it's difficult to. Look at also Kasper Stakachonis, what he's asked to do. Will Riley, what he's asked to do for that Illinois team that got blown out of the water at the Garden against Duke and their talented freshmen. So it is a really intriguing debate here because Cooper Flagg has unanimously set the standard for what freshman talent can perform like in their first season. But because of that standard, and because certain freshmen are not necessarily in as good of situations as a Cooper Flagg, I can't really say that anyone can call themselves the second best freshman. Now, in terms of how I view all these questions and how they might translate to what could transpire in the NCAA tournament, I think the one debate that a lot of people are going to have is the SEC really going to be the team to beat in the NCAA tournament, or are a lot of those teams going to be paper tigers and fold in, say, early rounds? If Michigan does get a 1 seed or wins the Big Ten regular season or conference tournament, are they truly going to be a quote-unquote dark horse? And last but not least, how much will this freshman class matter in the NCAA tournament? Will Cooper Flagg and his crew of freshmen make a deep run? Will there be enough freshmen in teams where they themselves have to be the guys to make a difference for their team and lead them on dark horse runs? I don't necessarily know the answer to that, but I do know that this March Madness tournament is setting up to be one of the greatest of all time. And that's really all you could hope for if you're a college basketball fan. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because coming next we transfer over to the world of footy, talking about a very important game in terms of Champions League qualification and who could finish in second behind Liverpool running away with the title. It's Nottingham Forest Arsenal right after this short break.